Fantastic. Thank you very much. Do you hear me well?
Yes, everything is great.
Fantastic. So yeah, it was a little bit hard to combine everything. I wanted to be all places, and then in the end it was a bit complicated. So right now I sit in the Sino-Danish Center in Beijing, China. And the presentation will be from there. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to make the presentation here from China. I hope this is all right. I will stay with Denmark. So AI for the people, generative AI in the public sector, and being a university professor, I will mostly try to talk about the current ongoing discussion in the public sector. So what are people talking about? What are politicians asking themselves? How to use generative AI, large language models in the public sector. Aside from being an associate professor at Aalborg University, I also run the AI Denmark project, where we collaborate with many startups and small and medium-sized companies. So I kind of do both things. But let's get started. So why is this why is this even a topic? Because you could say we already have ChatGPT, and what is the problem? Well, the problem is there is no Danish language model as such that is openly available, that people can actually deploy in their organizations if they don't want to rely on an external vendor. So we see currently generative AI, large language models, as a logical next step in the digitalization of the country. You already heard many different things, how the digitalization has been a success story for Denmark. And this new wave of systems is just the next logical step. However, there is no Danish model that is reliable and open. There are many opportunities, but we also are facing many unknowns. And this is what I would like to talk about here today. So I would even say it's trade-offs and potentially dilemmas that are related to the implementation, the development of these models, that are related to the ownership of the models and the systems and their deployment. And then, of course, also data and privacy and the performance of those systems. So let's kind of briefly speak about the vision and what people are very excited about, what we really want to have. Well, on the one hand, imagine a situation where you have seamless, very well-performing language translation services. So imagine you are a person that does not speak Danish, and you still want to go to the hospital, for example. You still want to go, to interact with the public sector. Well, these systems can actually help, right? So we would really get a hold of these language barriers, even though in Denmark it's not so difficult if people speak English, but not everyone speaks English. And then the next, this is kind of like a big dream, virtual private assistants. Imagine you want to open a company, you're having questions about taxation, and then you have a reliable agent that actually can help you and answer your questions at the right time. Wouldn't that be fantastic, right? And then, of course, there's many things that are kind of happening behind the scenes. So case processing. If, let's say, someone gets into an accident and they are able to receive special type of payment from the state, well, the processing of this, the administration takes quite some time because there is paperwork. So speeding up this paperwork, that would be another thing. And actually, there is a whole report which has been produced by the organization of the Danish municipalities, together with a large pension fund, together with a big consultancy that specializes in these type of systems, where they go through all of these different things that the state is doing and then trying to classify them, what can actually be the domain for large language models to be a good thing to have. Where they go, like in the top, we have the things where we have low risk for the individual citizen and the data being abused. And then in the bottom, we have very high risk. And you see, so it's kind of like connected to the AI Act, the European AI Act in spirit. And you see we're going from very macro type of applications like research and policy development to very micro type of things like providing the processing of a passport or a certain healthcare service being provided to the citizen. And actually, These things in the very top and the very bottom, they conclude are not so good for using the generative AI, but everything in the middle is actually an area where generative AI can be applied. So, and I will share the slides later on, so if you want to read up on this report, ChatGPT does a very good job in translating it, I realized. So now let's talk about the challenges that I already mentioned. So first of all, there is a technical challenge, just in the way how these systems are built. So, you know, when we build a large language model that underlies these chatbots and underlies things like ChatGPT, we start with a lot of text. Then we have a pre-training process. This is very costly, requires a lot of infrastructure in terms of GPUs, server capacity. Then we arrive at a basis model, so like a foundational model. And then from there, we need another set of data with instructions where we teach the model how to behave, what we want it actually to do, like completing text, summarizing, extracting information, translating, all of these functionalities. And we need to have this actually in the language in which we want the model to be operational. And this is a big problem for small countries like Denmark, because we don't have so much language data out there. And we are also not so interesting as a market for the large players. So it is quite a challenge. The next step that is problematic is, you know, or let's say not problematic, but where decisions can be made, is how we develop it. So we can go for large generalist models, for example, like ChatGPT, which is one of these large models that can do many things, but it's very general quite often. And like once you go into the depth of a certain application, maybe it becomes a bit vague, and it's very expensive. And there is also a potential vendor lock-in. If you say, okay, well, let's go with the corporate solution, well, you may end up with a vendor lock-in. There are small specialized models, right? And those we can tune ourselves. But here the question is the performance going to be all right? Both of this cost, and it's not only the cost associated with the development, but it's also the deployment, because it is right now quite complicated to run them on your own. So if you don't want to pay, for example, let's say OpenAI or Microsoft, you could say, okay, I will run it on my own as the government or some kind of entity, some kind of organization, but this is costly and relatively complicated. Next thing is obviously privacy and data bias, and these things, we hear it a lot, but there is also something that I think sometimes people forget, and this is performance. If you're a citizen, if you're a person, you're interested in these models or these systems being personalized to your needs. When you talk to them, you want them to address you. So we need a level of personalization. But actually, there is a trade-off between personalization and privacy. So the more the model becomes personalized to your needs and performance, the more you lose out on privacy, because it needs data from you. And this data needs to be channeled inside the model. If you say, okay, well, let's not compromise on privacy, let's remove a little bit of this data that is very personal, well, then you may end up in potential bias, because now you are maybe treated as, or you kind of put into a box that is of people that are maybe similar to you, but not you. So you think like, well, why are you treating me this way, model? So you already see there is many of these trade-offs, many of these questions that are unanswered. And I have another list of questions that are currently debated in different parts of the government, in different agencies. How to finance it? Are we going to train it from scratch? Which principles to prioritize? Are we going for innovation, or are we going for culture? So that the model is very good at Danish language and history and things like that. And then the final, I could just continue down the list, but things like, how do we align the labor market once, for example, case workers are supported by these models? What should they do if they get more efficient? Then we can maybe cut on these jobs. And these are questions currently debated. I will close off with a bit of a hot take, what I think will happen in the next couple of months, maybe a year. I think we will continue having large models such as ChatGPT and similar in the private sector. But I think also, and I hope, that we will get towards a private-public partnership where middle-sized large models are developed, fine-tuned, hopefully, maybe not from scratch, by actors from the private and the public sector together, and that in the end will provide a model as a service a platform where different agencies can connect and use them. So this is what's right now debated. And then, of course, smaller specialized models are possible, but this remains to be seen how this will turn out. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Roman Jurowetzki, Aalborg University Business School, IKE. And I must say the connection from China was perfect. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to hear that it worked out. It's not always so easy.
Yes. So have a nice day. Thanks once again.